Good morning, friends. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
fine. So we are on income from salary, and first lecture is already done yesterday. Let's recap what we discussed as far as the income from salary we discussed in the previous lecture. We started with provisions of section 15, which deals income from salary, the scope of such income, and accordingly, section 15 says that what is the salary income for the year for the previous year. It includes salary due from the current employer or from the past employer, or salary which is paid or allowed to the employee either by the present employer or by the past employer or by a third person on his behalf. And the words used are salary paid or allowed. Allowed will basically include or capture the value of non-monetary benefits called as perquisites. And the third one is arrears of salary which are paid or allowed. That is the difference in the salary of the past period, which is either paid by the current employer or by the past employer or by any other person on his behalf if it is not charged to tax earlier. And based on this, we discussed about few principles which govern the income from salary. Like there has to be an employer-employee or master-servant relationship. Frequency of payment does not matter, whether daily payment, weekly payment, monthly payment, it does not matter. Salary is all inclusive and therefore includes wages, allowances, value of perquisites, retirement benefits, and so on. One can have salary from more than one source, maybe part-time employment with more than one employer. We discussed about surrender of salary, concept of salary, and another very important principle or accrual basis. Therefore, many a times you'll realize that advance salary is also taxed because of this concept of taxation on receipt basis. Yesterday we had discussed these things at length. We had examples. Then we started with provisions of section 17. 17.1 includes definition of salary. It includes wages, advance salary, any annuity or pension, which is a periodical payment after retirement, encashment of leave, which is unutilized, gratuity, which is a lump sum payment after retirement. Section 7 refers to some of the items related to salary income, like contribution to provident fund, etc. So those are also part of definition of salary. Any fees, bonus, commission, or any such payment or perquisites or profits in addition to salary or in lieu of salary. And then contribution to pension schemes. All these things are included within the definition of the word salary. Then we discussed about 17.2 that deals with definition of perquisites, which are different types of perquisites as defined by 17.2, like providing the housing accommodation either free of cost or at a concessional rate. It could be furnished or unfurnished, any other benefit or facility, payment towards personal obligation, payment of life insurance contracts, issue of shares under employee stock option or sweat equity plans, contribution to certain approved superannuation funds in excess of prescribed limits, and value of any other prescribed fringe benefit. These are the items which are included within the purview of the word perquisite. Then we discussed about tax treatment of various perquisites. One was medical facilities, where most of it is eligible for exemption, of course, subject to certain conditions. We discussed few common examples of non-taxable perquisites or facilities which are provided by the employer to the employee but are not taxable in the hands of the concerned employee. Then few taxable perquisites which will be taxed only for specified employees, that also we discussed. And in other cases, all the cases, some examples where the perquisites are taxable, that also we referred to. And then we were on section 17.3 when we concluded the lecture yesterday. So we'll continue from here. 17.3 refers to profits in lieu of or in addition to salary. If you recall our discussion on income, section 2, subsection 24, one of the points which I had made at that point in time is usually under the law of income tax, all revenue receipts are considered to be taxable unless there is a specific exemption. Whereas most of the capital receipts are not taxable unless they are specially brought to tax by virtue of a particular provision. And here is one such provision which or levies tax on some of the benefits which are in the nature of capital receipts. Now, what is a capital receipt and revenue receipt? One simple example will possibly clarify the point. You have a source of income, and that source of income generates a steady stream of receipts. It is usually a revenue receipt. What is generated by that source of income is known as a revenue receipt. When you dispose of that source of income, what you get is a capital receipt. Some classic examples: debentures. Debentures is a source of income. So when you get interest on debentures, that income is a revenue receipt. When you dispose of debentures, you get the sales proceeds, and that is a capital receipt. In investment accounting also, we have made this distinction and we have accounted these things accordingly. Likewise, an employment is a source of income. A job is a source of income. So what salary you get ordinarily on month-to-month basis, including all the benefits, is a revenue receipt. But when somebody loses a job, or when the person resigns or takes a retirement, then it is an amount received on either loss of job or termination or resignation or voluntary retirement, etc. And such payment is then in the nature of a capital receipt. And under 17(3), some of these capital receipts are specially brought to tax. Okay, are specially considered as income from salary. Of course, these payments may be subject to some exemption under section 10 that we will discuss separately. But basically, the salary will include these capital receipts as well. So, which are those capital receipts? First is compensation on termination of employment or modification of terms related thereto. You must be knowing that many companies are coming up with voluntary retirement schemes, or some of them are reducing the number of employees, and what they get is known as retrenchment compensation. So this retrenchment compensation or voluntary retirement scheme related compensation is basically for termination of employment. The employee's job is terminated, he is removed from the job, and therefore he gets a compensation. So such compensation will be considered as salary. The second aspect is or a modification of conditions. In some cases, there is a change in the terms and conditions of the employment, and in that case, the employee may demand that since this is not favorable to us, you give us some lump sum compensation also, and then going forward, we will accept the terms and conditions. And in such case, the compensation which is paid is for modification of terms and conditions governing such employment, and that will also be treated as a part of salary under 17(3). Then payment from retirement benefit funds. A person may receive payment from either gratuity fund or provident fund or any other superannuation benefit fund that is considered as salary under section 17 subsection 3. You may have some exemptions even for first item termination compensation. You may have some exemptions. Even the retirement benefit funds, you may have some exemptions, but those are governed by section 10. Essentially, this is first included in salary, and then you can claim the exemptions under section 10. The third is receipts under Keyman insurance policy. Yesterday I had told you what is this Keyman insurance policy. It's a policy taken on the key managerial people within the organization. The premium is paid by the business entity, by the company. And the benefit of the policy is such that if that person dies or expires, the compensation or the insurance claim will come to the company. This is a normal procedure. In those cases where the policy is assigned to individual and the individual gets some amount on maturity of the policy as a survival benefit, that amount will be treated as salary income under the head income from salary under 17(3), because these are the receipts in the nature of Keyman insurance policy. Only this policy, it is taxable. Usual life insurance policies, there is a section 10(10)(d). We'll discuss those sections separately for exemption. So that qualifies for exemption. But Keyman insurance policy does not qualify for such kind of exemption under 10(10)(d). It will be taxable under the head income from salary. So these are the additional compensations or capital receipts which are taxable as part of your salary income, subject to exemption wherever applicable under Section F. Any difficulty on 17(3), or for that matter, whatever we discussed earlier? Okay. So let's proceed. Now we come to deductions from salary. These deductions are governed by provisions of Section 16. And there are three deductions possible under Section 16. 16(1) is a standard deduction. 16(2) is only for certain categories of employees like government employees. And 16(3) is again for all, which is for tax on employment. So one by one we will see what these deductions are. 16(1) is a standard or ad hoc deduction up to rupees 50,000. That means if the salary income is less than 50,000, then whatever is the actual amount of income, that will be your standard deduction, so that the income will be nil. If the salary is more than 50,000, then the upper limit for a claim of standard deduction is 50,000 rupees. So it's an ad hoc deduction up to rupees 50,000. Maximum limit of deduction is 50,000. If you have a salary income, you can claim the deduction, and maximum amount is 50. If the salary itself is less than 50, then actual amount will be available as standard deduction. Then second one is 16(2), entertainment allowance, which is available only for government employees. So if the government employees are in receipt of entertainment allowance, they can claim the exemption. And while claiming the exemption, we have to compare three factors. And the least of these three factors is the quantum of exemption. Which are three factors? The first is a limit of rupees 5,000. So upper limit, upper cap is rupees 5,000. Second factor, 1/5 of basic salary or 20% of your basic salary. And the third factor is actual entertainment allowance received by the government employee during the financial year. So least of these three, minimum of these three is available as exemption. And this is only for government employees who are in the receipt of entertainment allowance. Here, one very important thing you should remember and know is that it doesn't refer to the actual expenditure. So whether the employee has actually expended that amount or not, that does not make a difference. Actual expenditure is not considered for exemption, for deduction rather. It's only these three factors that we have to compare, and the least of these three factors will be the quantum of deduction. And 16(3) is a deduction called as tax on employment. Have you heard of profession tax which people pay? Yes, have you heard of?
Yes, sir.
Yes. What is this profession tax? Can someone tell me? Yes, who has to pay the profession tax?
It is a state level tax, and as per state tax rate is applicable for the professionals.
Okay, okay. So basically, profession tax is levied by the state under the authority conferred on them. Most of the states have this kind of a tax, and it is levied for those people on those people who are gainfully employed in some kind of a trade, business, occupation, or employment. So it is even for the businessmen, it is even for the companies, even for those who are professional practitioners like chartered accountants, lawyers, company secretaries, doctors, everybody, and even those people who are engaged in employment. That means they are employed with someone, a job. Even for them, this tax is paid. We commonly call it as profession tax in Maharashtra. So this tax on employment is full direction. That for direction. In Maharashtra per annum. So whatever is the actual tax paid by the employee will be supposed to deduct the salary of the employee and remit it to the government in the form of a return. So that's the standard practice. So whenever such tax is deducted from salary, then such deduction under 16(3) for profession tax will be available to the concerned employee. Are you clear about the deductions under section 16? Any difficulty, any clarification required?
No, sir.
Okay. Now we will start with some of the exemptions under section 10. Now what is the section 10? Section 10 deals with what is called as non-taxable items of income. That means these items are included. These items of income are included in your total income. It falls within the purview of income, but will be eligible for exemption or will be treated as a non-taxable income subject to the conditions laid down by section 10. And there are 100 plus items in section 10. So we are not going to discuss all the items. Whenever we discuss a particular head of income, whatever is relevant to that head of income, that we will discuss, and some common items we may discuss while we discuss the income from other sources. Okay, that's going to be the plan of discussion. Now when you go to section 10, there are some exemptions which are 100% exemptions. So the entire income will be exempted from tax. There will be some exemptions which are partial. In a sense, it may not offer full exemption, only the income could be eligible for exemption. And what is required is conditions to be satisfied. So section 10, various subsections which are different items of income will lay down certain conditions, and if one fulfills those conditions, one can claim the exemption. That's the scheme of law. So under section 10, there are few exemptions which relate to salary income. So in next few minutes, we'll try to discuss those exemptions. The first among them is a leave travel concession or leave travel allowance, section 10 subsection 5. What is this leave travel concession or leave travel allowance? You might be knowing that in organized sector, the employee is paid an allowance by his employer, whereby the employee is encouraged to travel by taking a leave along with his family members. This is basically directed for that purpose. It's a family welfare or staff welfare kind of a benefit provided by the employer, and this is known as either leave travel concession or leave travel allowance. So whenever the employee gets such leave travel concession or leave travel allowance, is it taxable? The answer is subject to exemption under 10(5). And how much is the quantum of exemption or what are the conditions? It says the actual exemption will be limited to actual expenditure on travel while the employee has taken the leave and he is on a holiday for self and family. So if the employee has actually spent this amount on traveling expenses for self and family members, and during such period he is on leave, he has taken the leave for this holiday, then such expenditure will qualify for exemption. Now, it's only actual expenses on travel. How to compute this mode of travel, etc. is specified by the rules, how to actually arrive at the expenditure on travel. But at the same time, the section does not refer to other expenses on travel. In a sense, this is only travel and not hotel, lodging, boarding, or those kind of expenses. So those will not be considered for exemption under 10(5). It's only actual travel cost like bus fare, train fare, air fare, etc. All that will be considered, but hotel expenses, stay in a hotel, lodging, boarding, food, that will not be considered for exemption over here. So these are the basic conditions. And one additional requirement is how many times you can claim the exemption. The section says you can claim 2 times in a block of 4 years. These block of 4 years are basically block of calendar years from 1st of Jan 1986. So 1st Jan 1986, so 86, 87, 88, 89, this was the first block of 4 years. Likewise, every subsequent 4 years, there is a block. And within this block of 4 years, 2 times one can claim the exemption. So it may not be claimed, it cannot be claimed every year. It is only twice in a block of 4 years. So this is the exemption called as exemption for leave travel allowance or leave travel concession. The next exemption is gratuity under section 10, subsection 10. First of all, what is a gratuity? Gratuity, as they call it, is a gratuitous payment or lump sum payment at the time of retirement or on resignation or on termination of job or on the death of the employee. So there can be different occasions when the gratuity is paid if to the eligible employees. One could be retirement, second could be voluntary retirement or retrenchment, there could be termination of job, there could be resignation also, or there could be death of the employee, then the gratuity will be paid to his legal heirs. This is a lump sum payment, and one important factor goes in calculation of gratuity is the length of your service. How long the employee was working with the concerned employer, that will decide the quantum of amount of gratuity. More the length of service, quantum will increase. So that's how the gratuity is calculated. So having understood what is gratuity, let us see how the exemption is taken care. First is a category of government employees, in whose case the entire amount they gratuity is exemption. Now, who are the first local authorities and defense personnel? For all of them, entire amount of death cum retirement gratuity is eligible for exemption. So government employees, no other conditions as such. Even defense employees, local authorities, no other separate condition as such. The entire amount of gratuity is qualified for exemption. The second category of employees is those employees who are covered by Payment of Gratuity Act. We have a labor law or industrial law called as Payment of Gratuity Act, which lays down certain conditions, and those are to be fulfilled by certain entities to whom the law applies. So if the employer is covered by Payment of Gratuity Act, then whenever he pays the gratuity to the employee, it is a list of following items that will be eligible for exemption. List of 3 items is eligible for exemption. Minimum of 3 items is the exemption. How do you calculate this exemption? What are these 3 factors? First is actual amount received. Whatever amount is actually received by the employee as gratuity, that is the first factor. Second factor is overall limit of rupees 20 lakhs. So upper limit for this case is 20 lakhs rupees. And the third factor is what we have to actually calculate by using a formula. This formula is given by Payment of Gratuity Act to calculate the amount of gratuity. So in the third point, what is calculated is actually the amount of gratuity as per Payment of Gratuity Act 1972. It says 15 days salary for every completed year of service or part thereof in excess of 6 months. That means for every year of completed year of service, you will calculate 15 days salary, number 1. Or part thereof in excess of 6 months. That means fraction of the year. How will you deal with? If the fraction of the year is more than 6 months, it will be counted as 1 year. If fraction of the year is less than 6 months, it will be ignored for this purpose. Suppose an employee has been working with the employer for 26 years and 4 months. Then when you calculate 15 days salary, you will consider only 26 years and you will ignore the fraction. But suppose the employee was working with the employer for 26 years and 7 months, which is the fraction is more than 6 months. So there it will be taken as 27 years of service. That's how this calculation will have to be made. And you can actually put this up in a form of a formula. The formula will be 15 divided by 26 multiplied by completed years of service multiplied by last salary drawn. That's how we calculate this. So what is this 26 then? Because I said 15 by 26 multiplied by number of years of service multiplied by last salary drawn including basic and DA. So what does it mean actually? See, as per Gratuity Act, number of days, working days in a month are specified as 26. So when you calculate 15 days salary on proportionate basis, you take 15 by 26 as a proportion for for calculation of salary. So therefore 15 by 26 multiplied by number of years of service. What we just discussed, less than 6 months, more than 6 months, how to round up that year, how to ignore the fraction. So those number of years of service and multiplied by salary. Now what is the meaning of salary? The last point talks about salary. It says salary means last drawn salary. So at the time of retirement or death or resignation, what was the last drawn salary of the employee? That has to be referred over here. And what is the composition of this salary for calculation? It is only basic salary and dearness allowance. So other allowances will not be considered for this calculation. So 15 days salary for every completed year of service or part thereof in excess of 6 months. The formula is 15 by 26 multiplied by salary multiplied by number of years of service. Number of years of service I have just explained how do we calculate that. And salary for this purpose is the last salary drawn by the employee at the time of his retirement, and that will include both basic as well as dearness allowance. And the minimum of these three factors is the amount of exemption. So actual amount received, limit of 20 lakhs, and third calculation, that is 15 by 26 into number of years into salary last drawn, that is basic and DA. Whatever amount is the minimum out of these three, that will be considered as the quantum of exemption. Are you clear about this exemption part, the calculation?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. When I send you
Yes,
these,
sir.
yeah, when I'll send you this now, I'll add that formula here. The formula is not here at the moment. I will add that formula and then convert in PDF and then send it to you. Okay, that will be easier to understand. Then the third category is other employees. We saw two categories so far for gratuity exemption. One was government employees. Entire amount was eligible for exemption. Second one was Payment of Gratuity Act 1972. Whomsoever it applies. So employees covered under that act, what is the quantum of exemption that we saw. And now residuary category, all other employees who are neither government employees or the employees are not subject to Payment of Gratuity Act. So in those cases, what happens? Here again we have three factors, but the calculation is slightly different. The factors are actual amount received, whatever is the gratuity received. Second one is also the same, upper limit of 20 lakhs, maximum limit of 20 lakhs. Third calculation, third factor is different. Third factor says half month salary for every completed year of service. And the meaning of salary is also different. Let us understand what it is. The third part, the third factor is half month salary. In earlier case, it was 15 days salary. Now it is half month salary for every completed year of service. That means here we are going to entirely ignore the fraction. There we used to round off the fraction to next year if it is more than 6 months. If it is less than 6 months, there we used to ignore the fraction. Here, whether it is more than 6 months or whether it is less than 6 months, in both the cases, we have to ignore the fraction. So half month salary for every completed year of service. So your formula will be half into salary into number of years of service. There the formula was 15 by 26 into salary into number of years of service, and the meaning of salary was different and the calculation of number of years was also different. Here the formula is different. Here the formula is half multiplied by salary multiplied by number of years of service, ignoring the fraction. Now the most important part is, what do you mean by salary? There in earlier case, it was basic and DA both, and it was the last salary drawn by the concerned employee. That was the meaning of salary there. Here, first of all, salary means average salary for 10 months preceding the month of retirement. So you are not going to take the salary on retirement. Which salary you will calculate, consider for average salary for 10 months preceding the month of retirement. Somebody retires in the month of, let's say, December 2019. Then from November 2019, you go back to a period of 10 months, calculate the average salary for 10 months. That is the meaning of this. And what is included in salary? Here it says salary includes basic salary. DA will be included if DA is part of retirement benefits. So if your retirement benefits are calculated by including DA, DA will factor as part of salary. If it is not, then DA will have to be ignored. And there is a third component here, commission based on fixed percentage of turnover. If the employees are getting commission, if the employees are eligible for commission from the employer, which is a fixed percentage of turnover achieved by them. So usually this will apply to marketing guys. So whenever you have any turnover related performance indicators for you, then based on turnover achieved by you, salesmen especially or marketing people, they will get a commission. Percentage will be fixed, 0.25%, 0.1% on the sales effected by them, on a turnover achieved by them. So that commission will also be a part and parcel of this salary. So both the cases covered by Gratuity Act and non-covered by Gratuity Act, the meaning of salary is different. The number of years calculation is also different. So here it is half month salary for every completed year of service. So let us ignore the fraction here as indicated. And salary is average salary for 10 months preceding the month of retirement, and it includes basic. DA to be included only if DA is part of retirement benefits, and commission to be included if the commission is paid as a fixed percentage of turnover achieved by the concerned employee. Are you clear about this third part also? Third method of calculation for other employees? Gratuity exemption?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Can we go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Now, yeah. The next is 10.10a, commuted value of pension. Now let us understand what is this commuted value and what is this pension. As you know, pension is a retirement benefit. So whenever the employee retires, if he is having a pensionable job, he will be paid pension every month as per the terms and conditions of his employment. Now this is a recurring payment, this is a monthly payment, so it will be taxable under the head salary. If you see the definition of salary 17(1), it includes pension or annuity. So monthly income in the nature of pension is always considered under the head salary. Then what is this commuted value of pension? Commuted value of pension means you have a choice. Either you receive monthly pension or you receive a discounted value of that at the time of retirement in lump sum, which is known as commuted value of pension. So if you choose to do a commutation, that is to take lump sum value at the time of retirement, that is known as commuted value of pension. So when you receive this commuted value of pension or a lump sum amount, you can claim exemption under 10.10a because that amount is taxable as salary subject to this exemption. If you choose to receive monthly pension, that is also taxable as salary, but there is no exemption for that. Now, when you do the commutation of pension, either you can do 100% commutation, full amount can be received as a lump sum, or you can do partial commutation. Only part of the amount you will receive, remaining amount will be paid as monthly payment or a monthly pension. So, whenever the commuted value is received, lump sum payment is received, what are the exemptions? If it is a government employee, then entire amount is eligible for exemption. So, any amount received by government employees as commuted value of pension qualifies for exemption. And for non-government employees, the exemption depends on whether the employee is receiving the gratuity or if he is not receiving the gratuity. If the employee has received the gratuity, it is 1/3 of normal commuted value of pension. And if he does not receive the gratuity, then it is 1/2 of the normal commuted value of pension. So for government employees, entire amount of commuted pension qualifies for exemption. For non-government employees, it is dependent on whether they have received gratuity or not. If they have received gratuity, it is 1/3. If they have not received gratuity, it is 1/2. But this 1/3 or 1/2, as the case may be, is referring to what is called as normal commuted value of pension. These are very important words. Okay, please note these words. Normal commuted value of pension. So what exactly it means is a full commuted value of pension. And how it is different than the actual amount received as commuted value, we will see when we actually do the sums on this. Okay, for the time being, just remember the words normal commuted value of pension, which are very important because that will make a difference in calculation. So that 1/2 or 1/3 is not of actual amount received as commuted value, but of normal commuted value of pension. So we will see that distinction, we will see that calculation and the underlying difference when we do the sums based on this. Is the concept of commuted value of pension clear to everyone? Yes? Commuted value?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And the exemption, calculation of exemption is also clear? Okay. Now we go to 1010B, which is dealing with retrenchment compensation. What is retrenchment? The employee is removed from the job. Employee's job is terminated. So when the employee's job is terminated, he may be eligible to receive what is called as retrenchment compensation. And whenever this retrenchment compensation is received, we can claim the exemption under 1010B. First possibility is full exemption if the scheme is approved by the government. If the approval of the scheme is there, then it is the full amount that qualifies for exemption. And in other cases, we have to find out what is the Industrial Disputes Act. IDA is Industrial Disputes Act. So we have to find out what is the amount payable as per Industrial Disputes Act. It gives you Industrial Disputes Act, and upper limit for claim is 5 lakhs. Upper limit for exemption is 5 lakhs. So full exemption if the scheme is approved by government. All other cases, you have to find out the amount payable as per Industrial Disputes Act and then apply the upper limit of 5 lakhs. So maximum exemption that you can claim for retrenchment compensation is only 5 lakhs subject to these conditions. One more similar exemption is available under 1010C, and that is called as voluntary retirement scheme related compensation. In between, a lot of companies and some of the semi-government undertakings also came up with what is called as voluntary retirement scheme. The recent example is BSNL. Okay, BSNL as well as MTNL, both of them have come up with voluntary retirement schemes. So whenever voluntary retirement schemes are offered to the employees and they receive the compensation called as VRS compensation, they can claim exemption subject to the provisions of section 10 subsection 10C. Now what are the conditions? Firstly, only employees of specified employers are eligible for this exemption. So this will include public sector undertakings, private companies whose schemes are approved by the government. Okay, not all of them, but scheme has to be approved by the government. Then private sector companies, insurance companies, nationalized banks, state undertakings, national government, central government undertakings, universities. Okay, these employees are covered for this purpose. And for them, for government and other undertakings, and even for private cases, the scheme has to be approved by the government. So VRS scheme must be an approved scheme for this purpose. And the upper limit of exemption is 5 lakhs. So if the employee receives more than 5 lakhs, he can claim exemption only up to 5 lakhs. If it is less than 5 lakhs, then the entire amount is eligible for exemption under 1010C. And what is most important is the employer should be eligible employer as per the provisions of 1010C, and the scheme has to be approved by the central government. If these two conditions are fulfilled, then this VRS compensation also is eligible for exemption under 1010C, subject to the overall limit of rupees 5 lakhs. Are you clear about VRS compensation? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We go to the next section, and that is 1011. And 1011 is dealing with payment from statutory provident fund or a notified provident fund. Now, what is a statutory provident fund and what is a notified provident fund? Statutory provident fund is the one which is established in accordance with Provident Fund Act of 1925. That is known as a statutory provident fund. And what is a notified provident fund? Notified provident fund is the one which is notified by the government for this purpose. As of now, only one fund is notified, and that is called as Public Provident Fund. All of you must have heard of Public Provident Fund, where people invest and get some tax benefit, and interest on PPF account is also tax free. Okay, so 1011 refers to payment from statutory provident fund or notified provident fund. It also includes payment received from government provident fund, GPF. Okay, so payment from GPF, statutory provident fund, or notified provident fund like PPF. So whenever the person receives any payment from such funds, it is eligible for exemption under 1011. Now, when the person receives any payment from such funds, it will include his own contribution over a period of time. It will include his employer's contribution over a period of time, and it will also include interest on these accumulated contributions. So the entire amount received by him will be eligible for exemption. So it is quite possible that the employee has withdrawn the amount during the service, during the course of his service for some reason, or on retirement he receives the amount, or on the death of the employee, the amount is paid to his legal heirs. In either case, the amount is qualified for exemption. There is only one restriction here, that there is a limit of 5 years for withdrawal of compensation, withdrawal of these amounts. If the amounts are withdrawn before a period of 5 years, subject to certain conditions, it will be considered as a taxable and it will not qualify for exemption. But after 5 years of service, this amount will not be liable for tax. And similar exemption under section 10 subsection 12, that is for payment from a recognized provident fund. So what is a recognized provident fund? A recognized provident fund is the one which is registered with the Commissioner of Income Tax, which is registered and approved by the Commissioner of Income Tax. That is known as a recognized provident fund. So same way under 1011, in the same fashion under 1012, if a person is receiving any payment from a recognized provident fund, then that payment will be qualified for exemption under section 10 subsection 12. The entire amount of amount received from that qualifies for exemption under section 10 subsection 12. Is the provision of 1011 and 1012 clear to everyone? Yes? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So with this, I will conclude today's session. There are a couple of more sections of salary income which are also qualified for exemption, like 1013A, house rent allowance, and couple of other things that we'll continue with in the next session. Let's not force the entire exemption related issue in one session because little technical discussion. So today we'll close our session with this. Okay. Any doubts so far? Yes, any doubts?
No, sir.
No? Okay, so just give me a minute. I'll conclude the recording and then I'll take that. Just give me a minute.